Yet I just love it when I get one of those instant connections with somebody I meet.
I do too. And it's not typical, is it?
No, what's a cake?
Time and a little more time and a little more time.
Typically. Yeah.
Typically.
Moving forward with the Dekker Team. Moving forward together with the Dekker Team.
So we're excited to welcome you to another episode of Life's Inside Track. I'm Yetta Dekker.
And I'm Ken Dekker.
And we get to share techniques, thoughts, tips, tools, and some tactics that we all need. We all deserve, you, I, everyone. So we get to turn our house into home, our families thrive, and we live the best life possible. So we're going to consider this time community. Like, what does it take to connect inside community? We're saying time. And what are some of those ways? Because as you're listening to our stories, I want you to think about what we've done to develop and connect with you over time, and think about ways that you might do so or have done so inside your own community.
Yeah, it's an interesting question because we knew when we started this business, you started 35 years ago. No.
Almost 35 years ago.
Yeah, 35. Almost 35 years ago, you started in this industry. And one of our first slogans was, all our homes need are families. And we had the cute little people on the end, and it was a nice graphic. But the point was, we wanted, right from the beginning, we didn't want to have a transactional business, a business, where it was burn them and churn them, like find somebody that needs to buy a house, sell them a house, and then forget about them. Go find somebody else that needs to buy a house or sell a house. And we didn't want that. We wanted to build a community. So today's show, we're going to talk about 3 of the things that we do at the Dekker Team to build community, right?
Right. And the point of it is, think about, what do you do to build community? They're probably not going to be exactly the same. And yet there are things that it takes as you invest your time to build community. And we're hoping that you'll learn from our example. And did we really know what we were doing at the very beginning? Not really. We just knew we had a heart for service. We knew that. And the reason we knew we had a heart for service is before I ever even contemplated the concept of going into real estate, we had friends, and you've maybe heard us share this before, come out and hanging out with us on the weekends so that we could go open house it with them, because we wanted them to come live where we lived once we bought a property in rural Osgood.
Yeah.
Right? And
Absolutely.
So that was a sense of community. How do we build community? Because we didn't really have community where we lived yet. So how do you build community where you live is the thing I want you to be thinking about in the back of your mind as we share with you how we built community within our business. Right? And one of those first things, not the very first, but within a couple of years, right?
Yeah, before I got in the business, because I remember I was your assistant helping you with that newsletter.
Right. So one of the first things I did was take on a newsletter. And it wasn't even like it was my idea. Like, I didn't know what it would take to create community. So it kind of happened by accident, except I'm going to say it wasn't really by accident. No. Because there was a couple that were a real estate couple in our brokerage. We'd both been there a couple of years. And they had a newsletter that they used to do in the community that we lived in. And it was called The Bearer, the Osgood Bearer, actually, at that time. And now it's I shouldn't say just. It is now The Bearer. And we keep remaking it and redesigning it and rethinking it. In fact, just the other day, we had some friends at the house, and I had all this pile of paper pulled up on my floor, and I had a chaos in my creative office. And she said, "What is all that?" And I said, "Actually, that is some of the earlier versions of the community newsletter." And the comment was, you should take it and you should frame one of the older ones and frame some of the in between and the newer ones, because the transition is huge.
Yeah.
Right. But what we knew, I guess, is that community was created over time. And this couple in the brokerage were doing the same thing. They knew that community was built over time. with a group of people.
Mm-hmm.
And they unfortunately were leaving the industry. They were aging, they had some health challenges, and they looked around the office of about 35 agents at the time. And I would have been one of the newest top 5, probably, newest, like one of the most 5 recent, and doing well in the industry. And they came to me and said, would you be willing to take over our newsletter? And it was a commitment. We've talked about commitment in previous episodes.
Was it ever?
It was a commitment. As it turns out, that little newsletter in the early days would take you and I, often double time, about 40 hours a week, 40 hours a month.
To build it.
To build it.
To print
to
it.
Print
to
it.
fold it. To
But then we started
mail it.
hiring someone else to print it, and even then it was
later.
taking us about 40 hours.
Yeah, because we're not graphic designers. And it was the original was a cut and paste.
Yeah, I had coloring books, and we had
But it
coloring
was all
corner.
about building connection and building connection with the community. So it had things like people's birthdays in it. It was it like predated Facebook. Right now, if you want to know when your friends or your community's birthday is, you'll see it on Facebook typically. Right. But this was, we put communities' birthdays in it. Right. Kids' birthdays got put in it. And
the really neat thing with it is the reason they chose me. Why did they ask me to do it?
Because they knew you would stick with it.
Right. They could see that's why I said it wasn't really by accident. They were already watching my behavior inside the industry, and that consistency was a foundation for me.
Right.
And so consistency is what I'm going to say is what it takes. When we say time, it's consistency over time of staying connected.
Yeah.
Of staying in front of the people that you care most about.
Yeah, and it could be your community is your local geographic community. You could have a sporting community, like your kids are in hockey or soccer or something. You build a community there. But if you want to develop that, you need to stay in touch. You need to, not just the odd time you see them at the soccer game, right? If you want to build a relationship, then there needs to be other touch points. And that's one of the things that the Bearer gave us the ability to do. Now, it originally was a monthly publication mailed out to thousands of homes. Like we were over like
10,000.
Over 10,000 at one point. And it became, though, with green initiatives, with the cost of mailing going up, the cost of printing going up, it became more evident that it needed to become an email type newsletter.
Well, it was also outdated for the most part by the time it could get to print. Like the logistics were crazy, and we tried it 3 or 4 times when the green whole thought first came. We took it off, and then we'd get nasty emails and calls from people saying, "What are you doing?" Yeah. And so we would bring it back, and then COVID happened. And COVID really made it impossible to print things because it was fearful for a lot of people to get print in their box. And so the great news is now it's a weekly, it's themed, it gives you real estate updates, it gives you investing news, it gives you general real estate, and it gives you a community and services edition.
Right. So if they want to get on that.
And get into our community. Get plugged in.
Yeah. So Bearer at dekkerteam.com, BEARER at dekkerteam.com, and we'll be delighted to get you connected with us.
Well, because we want to grow our community with you, right?
Right, because my favorite saying and your favorite saying is not the destination. It's not even the journey.
No.
It's about the people who are on your journey with you. And we're grateful to be partners with you in moving forward with wisdom, wealth, and worth.
Moving forward with the Dekker